Today on the podcast, we've got Clara Francesca. She is both an expert speech coach as well as an artist. She's directed, she's written, she has done pretty much everything. There are audiobooks you can see on Audible. She's done voiceover work. She's amazing with accents. And she is a feminist and ally here in this world. She's an activist and she's from Australia. So we learn a bit about her and her journey throughout the arts. I'm so grateful that she came on the show to share her wisdom with us. And I learned so much and I can't wait to share that with you. So we will go into this episode with Clara in just a moment. But before we do, I would just like to give you a bit of a warning if you are easily triggered by sexual assault. Here's a heads up. I know it's a topic that we talk a lot about, and I know that some people do need a bit of a warning, so that is why I'm giving it. So I recently watched the documentary Farrow versus Allen. Mia Farrow, that's her name, right? Yeah, that's her name. Mia Farrow versus Woody Allen. Have you guys seen it? Oh my God. I won't give too many spoilers away. I think that we've all learned a lot through the media of what's happened throughout the past 30 years. So basically, if you flash back in time, Woody Allen was hotshot movie director. And, Mia Farrow was super duper famous and really hot shit. She dated Frank Sinatra. She was really cool, but also a big academic. You could tell she was smarty farty and she wanted to be able to break it down with someone who was really, really smart. And I'm not really sure if Frank Sinatra was able to do that with her. But when she met Woody Allen, she was like, yo, I'm in love. He gets me. Yeah. So if one would ask, how does this nerdy guy get you more than a Frank Sinatra? I have some theories on this, which I'll go into in a second. So, you take someone like Mia, who's really wants to be smart and talk about life and change the world and adopt a bunch of underprivileged children and be able to make her mark and leave her legacy. And then you have someone like Woody Allen, who's total neuroses. Which with that total neuroses often comes a bit of narcissism and trying to compensate in other ways. Anyway, so the two get together and they start dating and they date for 12 years. In that time of them dating, some weird stuff goes on, which, anywhere you Google it, if you watch this documentary or if you just read stories about it, things got weird. Basically, Mia didn't like the way that he was treating their daughter, Dylan, and flash forward to in the movie where she's like, yo, you sexually assaulted my child. And he's like, I did not. So then it's what happened? So it's one of those Michael Jackson things of we'll never know, even though we blatantly have a survivor that's hey, I've been saying since I was 7 years old, this has happened to me. But then Woody Allen's she got coached. So she was just saying her lines and stuff. Anyway, moral of the story is we're never going to understand that. We're never going to know because we weren't there. There wasn't a video camera with a wide backup shot showing everything in a Woody Allen-esque style. But if you do look at the data, just the facts that we do know that in a lot of his movies, he has super young girls being attracted to really old guys. We do know that there's that thing of oh, you're so old, you can teach me things. I just want you to teach me things. And then we have that guy that's yeah, I don't know if I can teach you things. I don't know if it's actually possible. I'm sweaty. There's that dynamic that's in so many of his movies, which used to be super duper charming. But if you look at what he's done, you're maybe not so much. Anyway, so even if you want to not believe the victim that's been saying since she's 7 years old that she's been assaulted, even if you want to just take that and put that off the table, because that got put on the table and then this other bombshell is what came out. So even if we took that off the table, he's married to the girl who used to be his girlfriend's daughter. He's dating his ex-girlfriend's daughter. I'm sorry, he's married to his ex-girlfriend's daughter. Yeah. And true, they got together officially when she was 21. I'm sorry. Anytime you're going to date someone who's a lot older, any way you slice it, when you're young, you look at someone who's older and you think they've got it together. And there's that element of like, wow, like you're already going to look up to that person. So put that on top of the fact that like she's adopted, and then on top of the fact that like she had a rough upbringing before getting adopted, and then put that with the fact of like he's famous, and then put that with the fact of like he's her mother's boyfriend, so that makes it even hotter. Because I mean, if you can like get a guy who's a fucking like star, that's cool, but if you can get your mom's boyfriend, like that's its whole nother level of like Lifetime movie, right? Like that's a thing. Like that in itself is something. So when you just like break all of that down, like that's nuts. He married his daughter's, I'm sorry, he married his girlfriend's daughter. Not many people can say that. But I will say, in my own personal family, my cousin married her mother's ex-boyfriend. Well, I do know that people have daddy issues and are attracted to older men because they're a sense of stability, and put on top of that they're famous. Like there's so much to be attracted to. So watching this documentary, I'm thinking, A, what is this world? And B, who are these people? Like, what is this? But as I watched this documentary, it became extremely disturbing to me because I think that children are just such precious little unicorns. Like they really are. They have so much innocence and beauty. And I think that when sexual assault comes into play, like it is the purest form of evil. To be able to take innocence away from a child, like you the devil. Like that's just messed up in my book. So I wanted to open the conversation up to you guys. Not about that. Do you think that's wrong? But my question to you is, what do you believe? Do you believe that Woody Allen is innocent, or do you think that he is guilty of assault? So this is my question. So go ahead and put in the comments. I'm super curious to see what you have to say. So guilty or innocent? There is data from every side. I actually watched a couple of YouTube videos trying to say that Woody Allen's totally innocent, and I followed the narrative of what they were pushing. And, you know, they had, you know, data, and the data that they had just got disproven in the documentary Farrow versus Allen. So again, guys, I don't have the answer to any of this. I'm just fascinated by this story because it is so legitly fucked up. But I wanted to share that with you. I feel like some of you will have some answers. So go ahead and put in the comments. Let me know. And let's go ahead and bring Clara out. I'm very excited for this episode. She is such a smart chick and she shares her wisdom with us. So let's learn. Is your current headshot a little outdated? Is it in black and white? Head over to Queen Self Tape and get yourself some new headshots. Gabe Awan's got affordable prices and can also help you with self-tapes. www.queenselftape.com. Hey, everybody. Super excited about today. I've got Clara on the show. Ah! Clara, how are you? No. Oh my God. Is it Clara or Clara?
Thank you so much for asking. It's Clara.
Oh my God.
Clara, like car or star or bar.
Clara. Okay, so I think that it's very important in life that when you're not sure about something, you ask. And I think the same thing goes with names. And I think the same thing goes with names, even though you've known someone a long time. I don't think that there should be a shame in it.
Not at all. Good gosh, no. No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, I even barely remember my own name half the time, so don't worry about it. And I think that's part of what I think this 2020 movement into 2021 reconciliation and real change to dismantle white supremacy was about. To live in a space where these kind of check-ins are absolutely okay. Are you okay? Would you like some more water? Are you okay?
I think I'm okay.
Okay, good.
Okay. Good. I overwatered myself like a plant. Okay. I agree. Dismantle it.
Yeah. So, no, please check in whenever. And even if you call me Claire in another 5 years' time, there's no issue. I have no issue.
Oh, my God. Clara.
None.
Clara, welcome to the show. And I'm just realizing I'm not exactly sure how to say your last name. Is it Pagon? Pagon?
Thank you so much for asking. Okay, so let's have this conversation. Can we have 5 minutes to just have the conversation of introduction? All right, cool. So my name is Clara Francesca Pagone. However, the name has Clara Francesca Pagone. Si.
Clara Francesca Pagone.
However, the name has presented. Yes. The name's presented so much controversy. When I first immigrated to the States, I had casting directors fight me on my name after I'd slated. I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with the delightful slate, but for non-actors, you know, the moment where you tell the people your name and then they're like, no, isn't a G in like Italian like it's pronounced like a J, isn't it Pagioni? And I'd be like, I mean, call me Frank, I really don't care, I just want a book. So as a result, I then when I joined the union, I got my stage name as Clara Francesca because I could deal with Clara Francesca, I couldn't deal with Clara Pagioni. Which is not what you said at all, but just to share the long silly tales of the European Italian name.
I love it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So go ahead and tell our listeners first, how do we know each other?
We know each other through the wonderful world of standardized patients, which I also was listening to your podcast the other day, and I fully agree. It's a very serious, important role, and I love that we do it. It's the best. But like you were even talking about the fact that, you know, the responsibility in terms of teaching that empathy to the doctor community. So
it makes me feel really special. It's like, it's one of those moments where I'm like, I'm actually helping another person do their job. And not like, you know, not like whenever you go into a restaurant and you're a customer and you're like, you didn't bring my food right. Let me tell you what I want. It's not like a patronizing thing. It's like, okay, so this skill, we're going to work on it. And these might be some great ways for you to be able to work on it. And it's just like, it's such an open, it's the best. It's the best. Okay. So let's go ahead and it is. It really is. So let's backtrack for a second. So where were you born?
I was born on the land of the Boonwurrung people, which is known as the colonized space of Melbourne, Australia. And I like to honor the land of the First Nations people because today is Invasion Day or Survival Day, or conservatively known as Australia Day, which we're trying to abolish because it's literally the day that the First Fleet arrived and invaded. So we're not a big fan of celebrating a day of a nation on the day of genocide. So anyway, as a result, more reason I think to acknowledge the land. But yeah, that's where I hail from. And I like to then add the story that in the suburb that I grew up in is called St. Kilda, and it's a very hippie area. Now it's a bit more gentrified, but at the time it was very hippie. And I like to say that I started to come out of my mother's vulva in the middle of the festival, which is true. And they had shut the streets down because you couldn't get through. My parents lived in the middle of the suburb, and they still do. And the police were like, no, we can't let you through. You've got to like figure out another way to get there. I think a helicopter ambulance was discussed very, very briefly. Anyway, in the end, they let my parents drive through to the hospital. But I was born in the middle of a hippie festival
you are such an artist
in St. Kilda. So I do like to say that. It's like we're coming out. It's time to play.
Yes, that's incredible. So once you were out of the vulva, and there you are, you're like a baby, and you're like growing up, doing your thing. When did you start to like get into art?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my nonna was living with us at the time, and she was paramount to my artistic journey because she and I would play for hours. We would do mask work. She would let me do immersive theater productions. I mean, she passed away when I was 5, but like from the age of 0 to 5, I was doing physical theater. I was getting cotton balls and like stringing them to adult height level knee space to create these giant spider webs and mazes out of string and different color, and I demand the adults would go underneath and pop their heads up through it. So I think then that was really
Yeah.
where it started. And then she passed away, so my play buddy wasn't there. And I think from there I took a little time not involved in the arts. And then at the age of 12, with my mother's mother, my grandmother on my mom's side, she told me about a charity called Very Special Kids, which was raising money for children who were not able to access certain education spaces through a combination of various different ability levels. And I decided to write a play, and all the ticket proceedings of this play went towards Very Special Kids. So then that resurfaced at the age of 12. So, yeah, 5, 12.
Oh my God, you wrote your first play when you were 12 years old?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the title was. It was about a little girl who finds a magic Christmas box. I can't remember what the title was called.
I would watch that Lifetime movie. That's so cool. So there you are, you're 12 years old, you're creating something, you wrote it, you do it at school. What did that feel like right after you did something that you wrote on stage with other people, claps, it's over? What did that feel like?
Yeah, you're right. I must have experienced my first actor blues. Although I was directing and writing it, I wasn't acting in it. I got my friend Laura to play the lead. It was interesting, actually. It
Oh,
was my first experience
wow.
of doing production stuff and not acting in it. But it was powerful. I think there was probably a sense of actor's blues at the humble age of 12. But also what really happened was, friendships groups that didn't merge became part of the play. So that was cool that I had subconsciously brought some humans together. It was cool. We raised some money and we gave it to the charity. I think it was a fair chunk of change from memory. And it also taught me, I think, responsibility and how to hold the safe space for the actors in the piece you're doing. I really haven't thought about this memory in so long. Thank you so much, Ashley,
No.
for opening up my healing points with that.
Oh my God. I just love you so much. Okay, so there you are, you're growing and doing the thing that you do from 12 to 18. Like those
Yes.
years.
Yes.
Those are 30s are hard, 20s are hard, but those teens, they're hard years, right?
Yeah, they are.
Did you ever have like a moment in those years where you're just like, whoo, I'm gonna have to double down and try to figure out how to do this because growing up's hard?
These are great questions.
Thanks.
Man, you're wise. You're so wise. I did have those experiences. So I think the most challenging thing for me at that time, in hindsight, I didn't know this at the time, was that right. Wise little 16-year-old Clara. Was that I suffered from severe anxiety, mild OCD, which my brother actually clocked on to. I remember him being like, "You've got to stop that." I would do this weird thing where I would insist that I would have to jump up and tap the top of a ceiling, almost as if I was slam dunking. I mean, I was doing very, very mild basketball training at the time as, my physical activity for health and well-being. But I would have to do that every time I passed a doorway in the house. And there are many doorways in the house. It becomes obsessive compulsive and quite deranged. But it was a way of controlling my existence, because the good and the bad thing about my delightful childhood was that I was hyper high achiever. I wanted to super impress my parents. My parents wanted me to do super well, but we definitely suffered from what is now being correctly termed, I think, as the white supremacy perfectionism problems. And I was super at the mercy of that. And then it manifested in a bunch of other side effects that are not particularly healthy, like, body shame, mental shame, food shame. And so, yeah, in hindsight, I think the stem of that was from control and anxiety. Is that the question you asked?
I think so. So that was like the question is like, what was the tough thing you struggled with, kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah. And And it's so interesting that you bring that up, because I feel like a lot of people can definitely identify with that. Because we are in such a fast-paced nation of got to get this done, got to get this done, especially in the field that we're in, got to move on from this project. What's the next project? There's always this feeling of, like we're just waiting for it, waiting for that next moment, waiting for that next beat. So thanks for bringing that up, and thank you for your candid transparency. Thank you. So
Always.
I guess my next question is, so there you are, you're going into, young adulthood, those earlier teen years, like heading around 17, getting to 18. Now, when you're at that point, what are you thinking you're going to do for grown-up life? Like, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Yeah, so I'm gonna get even more deep and candid.
Ooh.
I had achieved almost everything I wanted to achieve by 17 in a scholastic perspective, meaning
Wow.
I had done all the high degree just to give the listeners a perspective, I was getting up at 6:30 a.m., going to band rehearsal at 7:30 a.m., then doing class all day. Lunchtime I would be in the debating club. Evenings would be preceded with theater rehearsals.
Mhm.
So it was bananas and pajamas, but good, and I'm glad I did it. But I became a prefect. Is that what you call it in America? We would call them counselors.
Okay.
When you're sort of school captain. It's a different
Oh,
system in Australia, but yeah. So I
wow.
was one of the counselors slash prefect. I guess prefects is more British, but essentially I was part of the sort of responsibility team of the high school.
So you were like class president. You were
I
class
wasn't.
to me.
Yes, ma'am. Class president for you, to
You were.
you.
You were.
Yeah, so totally. I was on a committee of it was a communal committee of class presidents, and then the head captain was someone else Caitlin was her lovely name. We have the same birthday, actually. Yeah,
Oh.
so I was part of that. So it was very high achieving. And I remember I turned 17. I was in my final year of high school at 17. In Australia, you do university based on grades for the final year, and the highest grade you can get is 99.95, and I got 98.95, and I was real
Wow.
proud of that.
Of
And I
course.
was super lucky. I mean, I'm fully acknowledging the privilege and the access that I was given to get there. But I remember that all happened, and I wasn't an adult yet. And then school finished. I wasn't even 18 yet. That was happening the next year. And I was like, what do I do now? My life's finished. It
Wow.
was really weird because this insane amount of pressure, I hadn't really thought outside of that. I mean, I had hopes and dreams from when I was a kid, but I do remember, a few months at the end of high school where I was like, I don't know what happens now. I don't have this obsessive compulsive structure, anxiety control routine
Mhm.
to help support me move into the next phase. I have no idea what this next phase is. And as a result, I made a lot of boo-boos, but I also had great human experiences afterwards. But yes, so in that phase, at that age, that's where I was at. When I was a little thing, I had this dream of having a cabin on a deserted island, and I would
Ah.
swim with the dolphins during the day and be a marine biologist. At night, I would look up at the stars and do
Ah.
astronomy. Oh my gosh, I would probably do both. And then on the weekends, I would make movies. That was what I wanted to do. I was like, I'm going to be a scientist who works with the sea and the stars, and then I do movies, and then I get my PhD in psychiatry, and I study human behavior.
That's amazing. Okay, I have a friend. His name is Sawyer, and he's 3.5. And Sawyer's like one of the coolest kids I know. And I asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up, and he was like, well, I want to be president and an astronaut.
Yeah.
And I said, both? That's a lot of jobs. It's a lot of stuff to do in the day. He's like, yeah, I'll go to space at night.
I love that. I saw your kindred spirit. Tell them I said yes.
Like, I will vote for you.
Well, it's probably going to space to have really great diplomatic conversations with the other alien forms out there. I mean, we've got to pull our weight. We haven't been pulling our weight intergalactically.
And more about that in this next segment. No. I mean, we could have a whole other podcast about that. Let's stay on track. Okay. So there you are. You're graduating from high school. What do you do next?
What I ended up doing next was I got into a double bachelor's degree of biomedical science and laws at the lovely University of Monash. I can't speak highly enough of Monash. I really am very proud of having attended that institution. In Australia, we have this great thing called government subsidized education, which I don't actually know if it's still as great as it used to be, and I'm sure there's a lot of political stuff we could talk about, which we just shouldn't get into. But as a result, it meant that it was a really affordable, fantastic law degree and medical science degree. And I ended up doing a version of Sawyer's Dream, I guess, because I would go to school during the day, and then at night I would audition, and on weekends I would do shows. And the degree was a 6-year degree, and I think I took a 6 months break to tour a commercial musical that I'd booked later on in the degree in the years that came. But I think I stretched it out to about 7 years. But I ended up graduating. I was doing the double bachelor's. I was working part-time at a medical law firm toward the end of the degree. I was doing volunteer social justice work with 2 legal organizations, one called Consumer Action Law to protect people from the dodgy things that credit card companies do. And the other one, and the other one was called Australia's Community Service Organization, which were rather contentious, but essentially, well, actually, I think less contentious these days. Now we're really talking about justice reform and criminal reform, but essentially helping people who had got into the justice system who were profiled to be in there having access to better justice systems. And I have to thank my father for that. He got me involved in that, which was really wonderful. So I was doing that, and then I was doing feature films. I got my Australian Union SAG equity equivalent membership. Again, we have this great concept that the union is one membership for all actors, and you can do anything you want, and the union support. That's a separate conversation. Anyway, so that, and then touring shows. So yeah, that's what I ended up doing once I got in. So yeah, I started uni at 17, which I was always hubristically proud of saying, and I really enjoyed the law degree in medical science. It was very useful too. The law degree ended up helping me out because I was, I'm quite the annoying conscionable conduct advocate, and so it was helpful because the Victorian Actors Benevolent Trust, which is kind of like the Actors Fund in New York, kind of a little different, but kind of, needed people on their board who had expertise in contract law and had a different perspective. And so I was very honored to be brought into the BABT's committee as not only having those skills. I wasn't a qualified lawyer, so I didn't pretend to do that, but having that skill set to be useful in conversation, and also a sort of, younger demographic perspective, which was also good to be in the room. So the medical science and the law has been profoundly useful, not only from obvious perspectives, but also artistically. It's been quite handy.
You're so amazing and accomplished and fancy and live multiple lives all in one. I think that's the best way to go about life. Learn as much as you possibly can, do as many things as you can. Life's not binary. Life's so much different shit. Yeah, I love that you kind of found your passion and went with it. So at what point were you like, hey, I'm gonna go for a trip a little further north?
Yeah.
How'd you get here?
How did I get to the United States of America, New York specifically? So, when I was 17, when I was 16, I decided to write a solo show called Susan Who. And it was about a working woman in the sex industry who was 16 and kills herself because of drugs and lack of accessibility to basic human rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so sorry, I should have issued a warning before I spat that out of my mouth. I do apologize. Anyway, Susan Who was an important solo play for me because St. Kilda, the hippie, delightful space that I grew up in, is also known as the red light district. And when I was growing up there, I think, and I can't speak fully to it because I was a child, but I think we did a better job of being more open-minded. And then I remember there was a time in my teens where St. Kilda was sort of the target zone of saying, we need to clean up the streets and da-da-da. And I remember being really angry at the government's response to that. I'm like, first of all, these are humans. Second of all, where do you think you're going to put them? You're just going to create the same, at least in this area, there's a neighborhood that knows them. My mom, dad, and brother and I would go for walks and we would say hello to the women that we would pass on the streets. It was not a good situation in the sense that there was a lot of support that these people and women were deserving, but it was already a sort of a space that was known. So I was very angry at this kind of concept of, I guess, I don't know, to make it crass, the trucking principle of we just move people around and dump them somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And so when I get real angry, I either get real Sicilian aggro, which is my heritage, or I write a piece of theater or a poem. And so I'd written this piece, and like I said, I was working with ACSO for a little bit, Australian Community Service Organization, and I was looking at a lot of interesting statistics. And what amazed me was I was 15, 16 when I was writing it. Women my age, girls, let's make that really clear, children, were doing this work, and for many complicated reasons, and the government's response was sort of to vilify them. And I was like, well, no, if this is going to sound like a terrible analogy because women are not bread, but if people want bread and the baker's making the bread, it's the baker that's making the bread accessible and the people buying it. That's the problem. So I was really angry at the way government was looking at this concern for health and access. So I wrote this play. This play, I did two things for me. First thing, I want to confess that I put my money where my mouth was. I did this volunteer work at ACSO to make sure that I wasn't just capitalizing on telling stories. And then I performed it. And it was from the perspective of a person my age, a teen, getting involved in a system that they were unfamiliar with. And that won Best Actress Award at the Fairfax Theatre at the Melbourne Theatre Centre, the arts centre that we have, which was a big deal. And so that was nice. And as part of these,
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it was nice. And so as part of that award, some Me Too issues happened, which we can get into later if you'd like. And then some good things happened. Like, I was very green to the industry. I really didn't know anyone in the industry, and it got me on the mailing list of all these, respected Victorian, Victoria is the state that I'm from, artists. And part of getting into this space got me on a mailing list where Laura Sheedy had invited City Company, SITI, by Anne Bogart's team and co to come to Australia and for a 2-week intensive workshop. And so I joined. I was green and I was like, yeah, great, let's do it. So I must have been 18 or 19 when that ended up happening. But that was directly as a result of this piece that I'd written, and it was in the same venue that I'd performed it. So it was sort of really great to feel like I'd created a home in these main stage spaces with a community that I was getting to know. And City Company at the time said, look, we do a training every year. You should come to New York and do it. And the degree, the law medical science degree that I was doing, the holidays are different for Australians compared to Americans. So every time City Company had their intensive workshops, they were like, you should totally come and work with us on this stuff and train with us. I was like, I can't, I got exams. And it never aligned. And then this amazing thing happened. I graduated and City Company was like, hey, we're actually going to start a conservatory. It's our inaugural conservatory. It's going to be 9 months and it's going to start in September of 2013. I was like, well, I graduated in July. Let me see if I can get my butt over to America. And so I got accepted to the conservatory, which was a huge deal for me. It was my first formal training in that respect. I mean, I've done a lot of training, but sort of more formalized training in that respect. And then I think it's important to have this conversation. Look at me having to be socially fucking annoying. Am I allowed to say that? I'm so sorry. Oh gosh.
It's okay. It's all right. It's just a word.
It is just a word. I swear more as an Australian, and I forget other people are not used to it. So anyway, to get back on track, I would be remiss if I didn't admit the next part. So the next part was the question of the visa. How do I get to America for 9 months on a visa? Because there are lots of limitations, and
but
obviously,
school. I mean, you were going to be going to school.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't the conservatory wasn't accredited yet, so they wasn't able to do that.
Bummer.
Yeah, a super bummer. And then there was an access for an artist visa, which I could have gotten and ended up getting later on, but it was super expensive to do it from Australia. It was like a 10,000 grand application situation. Yeah, I was like, I just graduated school. I know. And then a friend of mine, Fiona Buell, a fabulous screen friend of mine based in Sydney, she said, hey, there's this thing called the J1 visa. And I was like, oh, fantastic. Let's apply. The J1 visa afforded me the luxuries that I'm super lucky for, that I could come to America for 12 months, study, train, and make money during this 12-month period in any field I wanted. With the exception, look at me getting all political again, with the exception that it wasn't in babysitting work or sexual work industry. I mean, that's a whole conversation we need to have with the government too, because there's a sexism thing in that, there's a access thing in that, it's a whole conversation. Anyway, but I received the visa and I was able to do it, which allowed me this amazing 12 months to come on over. And I'd never come to your fine country. It was my first steps on the shore and I didn't know what to expect. And oh man, did New York teach me so very much. But the political thing I think I need to say is that when I showed up and I had access to this J1 visa, my fellow students, we'd all, sort of found ways to get here, all legal, all copacetic and all on the up and up. But no one else had access to this J1 visa, or very, very few people had access to the J1 visa in the three-pronged tier that I had. Often, my understanding is, I'm not an immigration lawyer, but my understanding is the J1 visa is often for one of those three things: to work, or to train, or to study.
Oh.
And I could do it for all three. And I thought a little deeper about this, and it is my unaccredited amateur opinion that I think the alliances of warfare is probably what allowed that to
What?
Well, Australia joined America in the war in Iraq, and I think there was some exchange, reciprocal rights thing that went down.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a guilt's not the right word, but an acknowledgement for myself, like, oh, okay, I've been afforded this real gift for my life, but I'm not quite sure how we got there. Like, I'm not sure what that entailed. So yeah, I'm getting real personal.
So that's how you got here. So so when this happened, though, you said that you had just graduated, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I just graduated law school. Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I thought you were 16. Got it.
My apologies.
I get it. Well, you've done so much. I just want to make sure that I, as well as the viewers out there, can keep it straight. So by then, you've already lived 4 lives. We get it. Just by 24.
23. I was 23 to 24. Yeah, you're right. Wow, look at you. Yes, Ashley.
Already lived, which is like really cool, and it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so there you are. So you've been here since you were 23.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So you get here, and do you think of going into law here?
I do for a brief moment, but I have so many issues with the American legal system that I'm like,
okay.
I think I would actually do more damage just at my iration. And also, it's a very, very complicated test to pass to
Okay.
do the reciprocal transition. I can't remember the term of it.
Mhm.
And then I would also have to have passed the bar. And so the expenses, the time commitment, and truly just a lack of interest. I think I can do more through my art. Yeah, in
For
terms of
sure.
my concerns for me
Okay,
personally.
so let's talk about your art, because you kept on this creating journey throughout the years. I mean, you've done so many plays that have gone to so many festivals. You had your Mrs. Marks play. What can you tell me what the title was of that one? That was a
Yes,
couple of years ago.
manifesting Mrs. Marks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
which you're just absolutely incredible in. And how
Thank you.
many roles do you play in that one?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I play 6 roles. I
Yeah.
might be lying. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible.
Thanks.
Incredible. So to date, what has been the project that you've been like the most I just want to hold you and love you like you're the one. What's been the one that's been the nearest and dearest to your heart?
The nearest and dearest to my heart is probably Mrs. Marks and a piece called Tunnel Rat.
Mm.
Tunnel Rat is a piece about the tunnel rats that were the boys who were underage sent to the Vietnam War somewhat illegally within the legal domains of American and Australian law of sending troops over. And they were boys, and they had to be short boys because they had to be able to go down the tunnels and horrifically kill the Viet Cong underground in Vietnam.
Oh
And
wow.
there's a whole community of tunnel rats. I got to meet the Australian tunnel rats and one of the American tunnel rats. So I'm not fully aware of the American sort of dialogue surrounding this, but the Vietnam War had so many problems on so many levels, but the added problem were that these boys were forgotten about
Mm.
because they weren't even technically, I think, like promoted as being there, and they were children, and their only mission was to go down tunnels that were pitch black and kill because the other, in theory, many of the men that were sent to war were too tall. I
Wow.
mean, also just the horrors of the fact that the Western world was there at all. But so we did this play called Tunnel Rat, and we did it at a theater in Australia called the Malthouse Theater, which is a lovely, lovely, lovely theater. And for the reason why I'm saying that's one of the pieces that I hold dear to my heart is because artistically, the director was fantastic. She challenged us to do a bunch of stuff. Emotionally, I was playing an American psychiatrist who was the daughter of Holocaust survivors and suffered from child PTSD, who was treating an American tunnel rat.
Oh.
And he was having flashbacks to the Viet Cong person that he had taken the life of. We did this play in American accents, and we did it through the American narrative of a biographical story that the writer had written. And I think that was useful for the Australian tunnel rat audience to have some distance, because it's through specificity, I think, that we find commonality. But the reason I hold this play so dear is because after we did this piece, we received calls from tunnel rat members who'd seen the play as audience who we didn't particularly realize were there actively at the time. And partners, wives of these tunnel rats saying things like, after this production, my husband cried for weeks and now he's finally talking about his experiences to me. And I'm like, wow. And it was a reminder of how powerful the arts and culture and entertainment are. Whether you're reminding someone to laugh or you're reminding someone to release cathartically and heal, it's just such a great job.
You releasing cathartically and healing, which leads me to one of the things that you do. You help people overcome anxiety.
I
Like,
do that.
it's a thing you do. Like, what is, tell me more.
Sure. So my company is called Speak Easy with Clara Francesca. And it's public speaking, coaching
Mhm.
essentially, and speech anxiety reduction work. Sometimes we do accent modification if people are interested in that, because at the end of the day, accents are just muscle, memory, movement. And I'm very sensitive of not promoting racism or tropes of silliness in that. But, there is value if I plonk my butt in France. I think there's value in me being able to pronounce the French words more effectively. And so I understand that some people have a desire to accent modify, so there's a clarity in how they speak. I mean, I'm even doing it now with you. I make sure my R's are a little more rhotic, because otherwise, if I was just talking too like myself, I'd sort of just talk like this and no one would understand what I was saying. I'd say, short, Clara, yeah. So yeah, the speech company is called Speakeasy with Clara, and it's been a privilege really to see how clients, through some exercises, techniques, and training, can start to love their authentic voice. It's really been a joy to do that, and to do that more full time. And I got into that because I did standardized patient work in Australia as well around 17, 18. And so as as we do, it's a lot about communication and empathy. And so I started working there. At the same time, I was teaching public speaking to a lot of private boys' schools.
A lot of what?
Private boys' schools.
Oh.
Yeah, and the only reason I go with that is because I was very young and they figured that out, and there was definitely gender tension and bravado, machoism going on. And I learned that if I just stayed authentic and zen, they didn't give me a hard time. If I tried to get defensive or school teacher on them, they would be real little devils. Yeah. So I did that, and then I did a lot of debating in high school as well, and I did a lot of debating in university. And so through the standardized patient work, through the public speaking work, through the debating work, and then through the legal training work, I started to build up a really great portfolio of techniques to reduce anxiety with speech and really look at what is authentic voice and what does that really even mean. And I've been very lucky to have a nice portfolio of corporate clients, entrepreneurs, actors, UN representatives, judges. So yeah,
that's
if people want to enjoy their voice, hit me up. We'll do some fun work.
Wow. What's the number one tip that you could just give someone today of what they can do to enjoy their voice even more?
Yeah, I think the number one tip that most coaches would say, and I agree with, is breathe. Learn to have a really good breathing practice. And there are so many options to do that. But to add to that, record your voice and listen back to it, because it's going to be uncomfortable to do that at the beginning for a scientific reason. And do you know the scientific reason? I got so excited when I discovered this.
Give it to me.
All right. So it's got to do with our standardized patient work. Remember when they hit that little metal thing and they would ding, and then they hit it behind your ear on the mastoid bone? Listen. So that's testing the fact that air conducts sound better than bone. And what do you and I have in our heads, Ashley?
Bone.
Lot of bone.
Bones.
Lot of bone.
Just
bones. So it's always going to sound, your voice is always going to sound different in your own head, because it will always be vibrating at a different frequency because of the bones than what you hear outside. So I think a big part of people feeling uncomfortable with their voice is because if they're formally presenting or they have to listen back to their voices later on, there's a dissonance between what they're hearing in their head and what's being output. And I think if you just start practicing by recording and listening back, you'll start to alleviate the tension of the brain's judgment of the different sounds. And so that's what I would recommend. Just start to record and listen back, because it will always be different in your head. You're not going to change that. You're not going to be able to pull out your bones. Please don't pull out your bones.
No, please don't. Please do not. Please do not. Okay, so I mean, such an expansive career. And you're like everywhere. I guess my next question that I've wanted to ask you for the past 20 minutes is, when are you running for office?
I can't, because I wasn't for it. No, I'm kidding.
But you could run for like a state official, no?
I totally could. I think I appreciate the question, and I'm honored that you're asking that question. I definitely want to get more involved in American politics, but I think it's more from an educational perspective and then applying it to work, because I don't know if I have, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I have the, what's the word? The fortitude, the makeup to be in those spaces full time. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think makes up, question for you, if I may ask, what do you think makes up a really good politician? Like, what do you think those requirements are to be in those rooms and those spaces?
I think that it's shaped throughout the years. I think that now people are attracted to people with passion. And I think that one of the reasons that celebrities do so well is because we feel like we know them,
Yeah.
and we feel like we see their passion, and we see, oh wow, well yeah, they did something with this, so they could do something with this. And yes, I'm calling you a celebrity. But I feel like you have that AOC vibe of, I can come in and
Digger.
take care of business and like set some facts straight, and you're not afraid of hearing, or you're not afraid of a debate.
No, I'm not.
You're not. And I think that all of those qualities, to me, they make sense for someone who goes into office. So I was just curious about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I remember my high school English teacher, Ms. Henry, and another teacher once saying to me, "That's where you need to be." And they gave me a Thomas Harding book and was like, "Read Thomas Harding and then go run for office in governance." I was like, "Oh, okay." So
Yeah.
I think, I mean, maybe that is something. I'm definitely not there today.
You're young.
But maybe
You're
there
young.
is. Yeah.
So I mean, this is also something you can do in your 40s and 50s and 60s. So
Yeah.
I just, of everyone that I know, I wouldn't be surprised if you ran for office. You would be at the top of the list of people I would think would run for office.
I appreciate that.
You know,
I definitely have some friends that I want to run for office, and I think they would do it. So I think backing them or being advocate for them for sure. Now it's an interesting question, because I think everything I do, as I disparagingly made fun of myself before, has some social justice conscionable
for sure.
consciousness behind it, and I can't help myself. I almost got not do a show without it.
It's who you are.
Right. And so there is interest. Yeah, I wonder what curious crossover that will yield in the future.
Oh my God, what a sentence. I wonder what curious crossover that will yield in the future. New art and technology experience. What is that?
Yeah, so I think the gaming world does a real good job of getting.
I have a gaming chair.
Yes, you do. It's pink. It's so pretty.
I didn't buy it because I game. I don't play any games except for in relationships.
Oh no!
I have. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I bought this chair because it's pink.
It's great. It's a great chair.
The only reason, but it's so funny because I'll hear a lot of people, like if I'm on a live stream or something promoting Skeleton Crew, and like it's funny because people are like, "You have a gaming chair," and I'm like, I had to ask Stuart. I'm like, "What's a gaming chair?" I didn't know, and he's like, "Well, now you know."
I think that's great. Anywho, yeah, I'm similar. I'm in a similar position as you with that. But I think the gaming world does do a really good job of getting users, aka audience, to engage in storytelling with the tech world. And I think most art forms have done a really good job of hybrid work. I'm thinking about dance companies who've done really interesting things with tech. I'm thinking about opera companies who've done really interesting tech. And I think the theater community, sometimes we get left behind because of, I think, just our practices and our maybe fear. I mean, the whole theme of your Delightful Podcast is fear. And I think that's a big part of it as an industry. I see that. And so I last year got the luxury of teaching as a guest teacher presenter at where was I? Stony Brook, for theater devised work and communication with reducing anxiety and speech for some STEM students, because a colleague friend of mine, Philip Baldwin, teaches there, and we were just sort of looking at experimenting with art and tech, and his STEM students were doing some really amazing things with tech. And then from there, the pandemic hit, and then we weren't allowed to go back in, and he brought a bunch of artists, musicians, DJs, visual coders together, and we just started to hang out every week. And then from that, a pool was born, and we call ourselves the Extended Reality Ensemble, where we're mixing analog art with tech art. And we've got some really exciting projects coming up. We're very much in I will want to say nappies, but I think Americans say diapers. Anyway,
Oh
we're very much in our diapers
yeah.
as an ensemble, but we're doing some really exciting things from a few levels. We are actively challenging and questioning and practicing dismantling supremacy within our team, and we're
Mhm.
looking at the We See You White America document monthly to review that. Then alongside that, we're trying to bridge that gap between what I am very loosely defining as analog artists and theater artists who might not have had as much tech experience. I definitely have as much tech experience as some of my colleagues in this team, and pairing them with tech artists. And hopefully all the funding goes to plan. We're excited in April to launch this enhanced poetry experience
Ooh.
where we're pairing analog artists with a tech coder and creating a live poetry slam room. It doesn't always have to be strict poetry, but an experience where the audience has to be live to experience like you would a theater piece, but using interesting technologies, different coding styles to create immersive experiences. So stay tuned. If you want to follow us, check us out on Instagram,
Oh.
Extended Reality Ensemble. And when we're hoping to build that, we're hoping to, because I do think, I don't know, I'd be curious to know your opinion, but I do think the theater community is sometimes afraid of that tech space. And it also yields a really, I think, important question of what is theater? Because if it's, I've thoroughly enjoyed some Zoom readings and I will do some more as the life continues. But how is that different to just a film that's pre-recorded? Like what? Because
Yeah.
that theater experience is that live
Yeah.
experience. So it's an interesting debate, I think. So that's what we're doing with that.
Yeah, I mean I understand theater. They're very old fashioned. And they, they're used to doing things the way they used to doing things in person, live. It's Zoom readings are lovely. I like Zoom readings as much as the next person, but I mean, we'd all trade our big toe to go in a theater and watch something live and hear someone sing live or hear someone deliver a really powerful piece or see the lighting change, and
Mm-hmm.
it creates a mood along with the music that you get from a movie sometimes when it's really like Baz Luhrmann and just like what the
Yeah.
fuck, like you get those moments. But with theater most of the time you're
Yeah.
guaranteed one moment of like
Yeah.
just something super satisfying. So I, I'm so fascinated with the fact that you're working with a company where they're trying to fuse the two together, because it is something that you know grandpa theater does need to come into the next century of like how to evolve in this. But I mean, we all know the beauty of what theater is, and I mean
Yeah.
there's so many of us that chased that beautiful dream for so long, or still continue to do that dream, or had to put it to the side so you could focus on other things. And so like
Yeah.
we get it. So it's very interesting. That's my 2 cents about it. Like I get
Yeah.
why, but I also see why it's so important just from an entrepreneurial state of view of like how to innovate. Like what are you doing to innovate? And I mean, some
Yeah.
places I feel like this is something Ars Nova would go into just because they're
Yes.
so innovative.
Yeah, and three-legged dog. I mean, there have been a lot of spaces that have done a similar thing that do it really, really well. I just, for whatever reason, I just see more dance companies and music companies en masse
Hmm.
be more open to bridging that gap,
Yeah.
and I think have been doing it for a longer time. And I definitely am not taking away from the live experience as I'm interested in exploring this hybrid fusion. I think, I mean, yeah, if it's all a big, I need to trade as a big toe, I'll be back into that room breathing and spitting on audience members right now. I mean, I think it's
Uh,
great. I
I
miss
love it.
it.
I do
I
too.
miss breathing with them so much.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. It'll come back when it's time to come
Yeah.
back, and it's gonna be better than ever
Yeah.
because people will have wanted it and missed it so much. So Those first few audiences are going to be also extremely forgiving. So best time to forget your line. Woo! So I guess my next question is, it's a question I ask everyone, and it's open to the interpretation that you wish. So when you feel fear start to creep into your own life, what do you do to combat that or embrace that or XYZ? Like, what do you do with fear?
I think what I've done with fear is different to what I'm doing with fear now. I think that's a constant conversation, which is why I really like your pods, because it is a conversation. It's different. It's a practice. That's the word I was looking for.
Yes.
It's a practice.
Yes.
I used to be real ugly when I would confront fear. And what I mean by that is blah, would sort of be the chaos that I would unleash on myself normally. And I'm sure there have been some casualties along the way. Some ex-boyfriends have dealt with my whatever. But now I've been really enjoying catching it. I've been like, huh, that's a human BS moment. That's not a Clara moment. That's not a loving moment. And when I catch it, depending where I'm at with it, to go, okay, can I just let it go? And I've been getting stronger at being able to let it go. I like to say to myself, I'm sending this back to the source from which it came to harm none, and just this sort of imaginary, like, whoop, bye-bye.
What a great affirmation. Can you say it again?
I'm sending the fear, or whatever it has come in, back to the source from which it came, and harm none along the way. And I have to thank my dear friend and mentor, Sheila Smiley, the clairvoyant comic, for that one. I would be remiss if I didn't credit her for that. So that's been really helpful. But, sometimes you got those days when it's not gonna shake. And so when that happens, to love it, to ask it what it needs, to just be with it, to think generally, just to try to ignore it, like, nope, don't want to deal with you. And so it's a combination of things, but I think right now what I'm being quite proud of is the sending back to the source from which it came without harming anyone along the way, and noticing it, because I really do think when those moments of fear creep in, I think it's just old programming, protection crap, as you say in your first episode. The limbic system, the fight, flight, or freeze or fawn response, and it's a great system if I am in a burning building. It's a great system if, I don't know, you're throwing a tomato at me. It's not a good system if I'm living my life or looking at my tax return. Said, no saber-toothed tiger is going to jump out of the screen and eat me. Yeah. And so checking that, I think, is really useful.
I love that. Amazing words of wisdom. Where can people find you if you want to be found?
Yes, I do want to be found. I'm an actor and I'm always available, so find me. They can find me on my website, www.clarafrancesca.com, or on the socials, CLAR_ESCA, Claresca.
Claresca. Clara Francesca, you are just everything that I needed today. I'm so grateful that you decided to sit down with me and have a chat and opened up and shared so much wisdom. Thank you.
I'm so grateful to you massively. I thoroughly love you and adore you. I still think about days that we had our musical standardized patient rehearsals in the corridors and photo shoots, and they were fun days.
Fun days.
So this was a good excuse for me just to connect with you again, because I like very much being in your aura. So thank you.
Thank you. I love being in yours as well. I like really smart, talented people, and you're up there, girl. So thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And all of you, tell us how you feel in the comments. Put it down below. We want to know. And with that, any final words, anything else you want to tell us about that I didn't ask?
Can I do 2 plugs for 2 little pieces?
Always. Give
Oh,
me your plugs. Yeah.
Okay. So, if people feel like an open-minded movie about love in multiple forms, I highly recommend In Corpore, which is a movie that's streaming free on Amazon Prime if you have it, or you can go to incorporefilm.com, INCORPORE film, FILM.
I'll put a link down below so that way you guys can find it.
And the final thing is, if you want a child-friendly issue that has some conscionable conduct elements to it, but it's child-friendly, there's no naughty words, there's no Clara getting aggro at the universe, well, not really. There's a great, great audiobook that I had the privilege of recording during COVID called Colapesce, which is an audio adventure of the evils that lurk under the island of Sicily and Messina. And I think it's beautiful. I think it's a beautiful piece. I'm also super proud of how we made it. We all recorded at home, and the sound quality, you can't tell. The engineering team did a beautiful, beautiful job.
Wow.
And most of the sounds are naturally made. I don't know. It's a piece that I'm real proud of, and I highly recommend it.
Cool. Well, everybody check it out. Check it out. Check it out. Check it out. Any final words you want to leave with everyone? Just like,
yeah, let's be gentle with each other. I mean, I like being busy, but you don't got to be busy. You don't have to be. You can, but just like be gentle. I'm trying to be more gentle with me, so I hope you're gentle.
I hope you're gentle. I took it in a weird
I love it where you took it. Oh, I'm going to have the best day.
Everybody, have a good one.
So what'd you think of the episode? It was fun, right? Go ahead and click the like button, and if you haven't already subscribed, do that too. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about this episode. If you're listening to us over on any of the podcasting services, leave a review. Rate the show. If you liked it, share it with a friend. Every performer who comes on this show has got a completely unique story, and I'm so grateful that they share them with me and with you. So I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Ashley Monique Menard. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.